stark contrast. The vice presidential nominees debate the life issue.
We support Roe versus Wade.
There is a choice here, and it is a choice on life.
Prepared for the worst, Hurricane Matthew prompts evacuations in the U.S. after ravaging much of the Caribbean. Controversial bill. City Council in the nation's capital considers legalizing assisted suicide. And papal reflection. Pope Francis comments on his trip to the former Soviet republics of Georgia and Azerbaijan. Those stories and more on EWTN News Nightly for Wednesday, October 5th, 2016.
Can you discuss in detail a time when you struggled to balance your personal faith and a public policy position?
And with that, the vice presidential debate turned to faith and the life issue. Good evening. Thanks for joining us. I'm Brian Patrick. Republican Mike Pence wins praise for his performance in Tuesday's vice presidential debate. Democrat Tim Kaine claims success in pressing his opponent to defend Donald Trump. Chief White House correspondent and political director Lauren Ashburn begins team coverage from our political desk. Lauren?
Brian, the debate lasted 90 minutes and the topics ranged from the economy to the Middle East to race relations, and there were jabs about Hillary Clinton's emails and Donald Trump's tax returns. But the second to last question brought the issue of life front and center as Senator Tim Kaine repeated his support of abortion rights and Indiana Governor Mike Pence defended the sanctity of life.
The sanctity of life proceeds out of the belief that ancient principle that where God says, before you were formed in the womb, I knew you.
Trump running mate Indiana Governor Mike Pence is clear in his conviction that life begins at conception. And while it's a view held privately by Senator Tim Kaine, Clinton's Catholic running mate, Kaine says he backs abortion rights.
We support Roe versus Wade. We support the constitutional right of American women to consult their own conscience, their own supportive partner, their own minister, but then make their own decision about pregnancy.
Pence praised Kaine's one-time support for the Hyde Amendment banning taxpayer funding for abortion, but he slammed Kaine's support for abortion up until the moment of birth.
What I can't understand is with Hillary Clinton and now Senator Kaine at her side is to support a practice like partial birth abortion.
Kaine also found himself in the role of defender and challenged Pence about Trump's inflammatory style.
I can't imagine how Governor Pence can defend the insult-driven, selfish, me-first style of Donald Trump.
And even Clinton's team isn't claiming Kaine came out on top. For pro-life Americans, Pence said exactly what they wanted to hear from a candidate on the presidential ticket.
My faith informs my life. I try and spend a little time on my knees every day, but it all for me begins with cherishing the dignity, the worth, the value of every human life.
Pundits and campaign staffers try to shape who won the debate. Jason Calvi takes us into the spin room for a discussion with campaign supporters.
Trump campaign manager Kellyanne Conway tells me the abortion debate proves that Democrats are radical on this issue.
He's showing the hypocrisy and the extremism of what's become of the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party I grew up in talked about safe, legal, and rare abortions, talked about hand-wringing, hard decisions to make with exceptions, and now they're basically abortion anyone, anytime, anywhere.
Clinton campaign manager Robbie Mook defends Kaine, who makes a distinction between his Catholic faith and his role as a public official.
Isn't that hypocritical?
Not at all. I actually think, very eloquently described how, as a devout and practicing Catholic, he has faced the challenge throughout his career of enforcing the laws as they are passed.
Trump Catholic Advisory Group member Matt Schlapp takes offense at that logic.
What Kaine did as a Catholic is try to explain that it's okay to be Catholic and it's okay to turn your back on the unborn. And I think that's cold to people of faith.
Catholics and evangelicals praise Pence's performance.
So much from the heart about his faith and how sincere he was, and I've only talked to him a few times in the past, but he's impressed me with his authenticity and his sincerity.
It didn't seem staged. It didn't seem practiced. it just flowed from his heart.
And on taxpayer funding of abortion, Democrats back up Kaine.
Yeah, I do believe that we should allow women to have safe medical procedures, and the government should help in terms of paying for that too.
Even though it's such a divisive issue across the country?
There's a lot of divisive issues that we all agree on, but if it's a safe medical issue, I think procedure, then I think it should be done.
Republicans praise Pence's promotion of adoption in the debate.
He really doesn't just talk about it. He has been a leader in Congress and in Indiana, making it one of the most adoption-friendly states. But, you know, Mike Pence has been a fighter for life ever since he got into this.
From here at Longwood University, our attention now moves to St. Louis, Missouri, where on Sunday Donald Trump has the chance to redeem himself in his fight against Hillary Clinton. Here in Farmville, Virginia, Jason Calvi, EWTN News Nightly.
And a recent Marist poll found that a majority of Americans, 62%, oppose taxpayer funding of abortion, including 45% of those who say they're pro-choice and 44% of Democrats. Now, according to Gallup, 1/3 of Democrats identify as pro-life. Susan Crabtree of the Washington Examiner and Jeannie Mancini of the March for Life join us now. Welcome to the program.
Thanks for having us.
Jeannie, Planned Parenthood is going to launch a $30 million campaign directed at getting out voters in key battleground states. Planned Parenthood's president, Cecile Richards, was in Iowa campaigning for Clinton. How is the pro-life movement going forward going to marshal supporters?
Well, isn't it just astounding to consider that our nation's largest abortion provider, a group that's supposed to be a healthcare entity, is so involved in politics? I mean, when you actually consider Planned Parenthood, they're like almost synonymous with a political machine. And in fact, that was Cecile Richards' goal. When she first took over Planned Parenthood, she said she wanted to make it an enormous machine, and it kind of makes me sick,
and
frankly.
Works.
It works. Now, what is the counterpart? Look, the pro-life movement doesn't have the bucks, that Planned Parenthood has, but groups like the March for Life Action, for example, have put out a scorecard. You can check it out on our website, marchforlifeaction.org, and we've put out this fantastic commercial showing the consensus of Americans on wanting abortion restrictions.
Susan, we're going to go forward to the next debate, which is Sunday, and the questions are going to be posed by audience members. Now, you've covered these debates. You're a White House reporter. Could that affect how the candidates answer the questions on social issues like abortion?
Absolutely. You had President Obama just last week, he had a commander-in-chief town hall on CNN, and he was confronted by VA people who were victims of the VA, people who had their husbands die from suicide.
PTSD, he mentioned a lot of, they were very angry.
Misdiagnosis, and you can't just wave it away with statistics at that point. You have a real person that you have to deal with, looking you in the eye, and Donald Trump particularly is going to have to tread very, very carefully here. We saw John Kasich have a wonderful performance at a town hall where he hugged the individual, and that was one of the warmest moments of his campaign. So there's same things that they can do that can really be winning moments for them in their campaign, can stand out, but there's a lot of pitfalls for a town hall as well.
Jeannie, the key to victory, it seems to me, is that Hillary Clinton energizes her base. Is abortion an issue that she is using to get people to the polls? We didn't hear about it in the first presidential debate.
Good. It's a good point, and I don't know why, because it was the second most Googled topic during that first presidential debate, and it's sad that the social issues didn't come up. I'll tell you what, Hillary Clinton is out of touch with mainstream America on abortion. She uses great rhetoric about a woman's right to choose and what have you, but the truth of the matter is she's for abortion on demand, paid for by your taxpayer dollars until the time of birth, and Americans, 8 out of 10 Americans are not in favor of that.
We just showed that poll, exactly.
Right, yeah.
So, Susan, Donald Trump has been making direct appeals now to religious leaders. We've had some African-American evangelical leaders here, and they have been very supportive of him. Is there evidence that this tactic is working?
Well, it's interesting. You had a USC LA Times poll recently that came out showing that he has about 19.6% of African-American voters, black voters, supporting him, which is sort of surprising if you think about it, considering that his favorabilities among the black community are almost to zero. But that showed that Hillary Clinton had about 81%. And compared to what Barack Obama, obviously his draw from the African American community back in 2008 and 2012. It's very difficult. People are saying that she really needs to compete on that level and that she's going to have a hard time. She needs to get her surrogates out. But with Donald Trump, his obviously he has a lot of ground to make up, and his outreach to the Black community is not, it seems to be not having much of an impact.
Okay. Susan Crabtree of the Washington Examiner, Jeannie Mancini of the March for Life, thank you so much for joining us. The next debate is 4 days away. Clinton and Trump take to the stage on Sunday in St. Louis. Brian.
Thanks, Lauren Ashburn. Other stories our EWTN News Nightly team is covering in today's world. Governor Rick Scott warns Hurricane Matthew could lead to the biggest evacuation ever in Florida. He says the storm threatens the state's entire Atlantic coast. Matthew caused widespread damage in Haiti before moving north toward the Bahamas. Rescue workers say they're struggling to reach towns that were cut off by the storm. The hurricane is blamed for at least 11 deaths across the Caribbean. President Obama says Americans should be prepared.
I want to emphasize to the public, this is a serious storm. Because it's not going to be hitting enough land, it is going to be building strength on its way to Florida.
Matthew could become the first major hurricane to hit the U.S. since Wilma and Katrina in 2005. Most airlines are allowing passengers to change to later flights without penalty. Cruise lines are rerouting ships to avoid that storm. A federal government contractor is arrested on charges of illegally removing highly classified information. Federal prosecutors say 51-year-old Harold Martin III stored the material in his Maryland home and even in his car. That criminal complaint says all the documents were clearly marked classified. Martin could face up to 10 years in prison if he's convicted. And a knife-wielding man stabs 2 police officers in Brussels today. Belgian prosecutors say the attack may be terror-related. They say the officers were attacked around noon on the street by a man with a knife. The suspect, a 43-year-old Belgian national, was shot in the leg before he was arrested. This is the latest attack on law enforcement officials in a nation that remains on high alert. 32 people were killed March 22nd in suicide bombings at the Brussels airport and in the city subway. 4 men, all in their 20s, found slain in Mexico were members of a Catholic evangelism group. The regional prosecutor's office says family members identified them. They were last seen outside their church Saturday morning. Their bodies found Tuesday along a road in western Mexico. Their former parish priest blames organized crime for the murders. Coming up, Polish protest. The pro-life movement remains strong despite the government's backdown on a proposed abortion ban. And the Pope reflects on his trip to 2 former Soviet republics. Cardinal Timothy Dolan of New York calls for all human life to be cherished and protected. Cardinal Dolan's statement launches the year-long Respect Life program exploring the theme Moved by Mercy. He chairs the Committee on Pro-Life Activities of the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops. Thanks for joining us this Wednesday evening. I'm Brian Patrick. Catholics and others protest a bill that would allow doctors to help their patients commit suicide here in our nation's capital. A District of Columbia Council committee approved the so-called Death with Dignity Act this afternoon. Wyatt Goolsby, who was there for the vote, joins us now with the story. Wyatt?
Brian, there is passionate opposition to this bill. Catholics and non-Catholics, people of different backgrounds are all voicing their concerns over the assisted suicide bill, the same kind of bill that's now law in California and Oregon.
Members of No DC Suicide, a broad-based coalition, wear red in opposition to proposed Bill 2138, known as the Death with Dignity Act.
This law provides a safe, protective process.
Spearheading the bill is D.C. Councilmember Mary Che. She says mentally competent adults who are terminally ill should be able to request medicine that would end their life.
I also am aware of others in the community, but also others who have come into the District of Columbia to share their stories, how urgent it is for them and their families to be able to have this choice.
But not everyone agrees that is a good idea. Stephen Makochik is a longtime Catholic advocate for people with disabilities who says the bill devalues human life.
It's not going to be limited to elderly people. It's also going to eventually include disabled people.
Assisted suicide, or so-called death with dignity laws, are now in effect in 5 states: California, Vermont, Oregon, and Washington through legislation, Montana through the state Supreme Court. Those in favor of similar laws often cite Brittany Maynard, who moved to Oregon in 2014 so she could end her life with prescription drugs. She wanted to avoid the prolonged pain from terminal brain cancer. Melissa Muscella, who teaches ethics at the Catholic University of America, says the church emphasizes compassion and support to anyone suffering from a terminal illness. But she says all life is valuable, and committing suicide cuts off an opportunity to receive God's grace.
Sometimes people say that those difficult moments at the end of life, caring for loved ones, conversations can be had. People can resolve things that they weren't able to resolve in the past, and you never know when those moments of grace are going to happen.
From here, the bill will go before the entire D.C. Council for a final vote in 2 weeks. And Brian, those advocates for life we talked to say they'll be there to stand up for their cause.
Wyatt Goolsby, thank you. And under pressure from protesters, lawmakers in Poland back away from supporting a total ban on abortion. Poland already outlaws abortion with exceptions for rape and incest or if the mother's life is at risk. Support for the total abortion ban was strong, with 450,000 signatures gathered. But protesters converged on dozens of cities opposing the proposal. Dr. Paulina Guzik is with the Pontifical University of John Paul II in Krakow. She says the government backed down, wanting to focus instead on economic issues. She calls the polarization of the debate amazing, adding the majority still supports the pro-life movement.
Obviously, they have the support of the church, who says that the life of a person is a fundamental value. And we need to remember that Poland is a country where over 90% of the society is Catholic. So the backing of the pro-life movement is huge.
Polish lawmakers voted against a separate initiative for a more liberal abortion law. Pope Francis reflects on his weekend visit to the former Soviet republics of Georgia and Azerbaijan at his weekly gathering today with pilgrims and tourists. Alan Holdren, Rome Bureau Chief for EWTN's Catholic News Agency, joining us from the Eternal City. Alan, what did Pope Francis say about the Catholic Church's role in helping those nations meet their challenges a quarter century after the Soviet Union fell?
Well, Brian, he said that the Catholic Church is called to go out and be present in society through charitable works, also through inter-Christian relations, and also in inter-religious relations. In a place like Georgia, it was really interesting to see. I was following the Pope there. We went to a hospital, and without this hospital in this suburb, this peripheral location in the capital city of Tbilisi, the local people there would not have had any health services, and this was run by the Catholic Church.
Also addressing ecumenism, unity among believers at today's audience. How did Pope Francis summarize his experience in Georgia?
He said it was very important for him. It was striking for him to be met at the airport upon arrival by the Georgian Orthodox Christian Patriarch. He said that was a very important sign. He also said it was very moving to spend time with the Patriarch in his cathedral. There were really beautiful moments of prayer, shared ecumenical prayer. This is when Christians of different faiths, different traditions pray together. And in one of those occasions on this trip, Pope Francis and the Patriarch shared an embrace, and the photo of that embrace actually went viral in Georgia. It was a really important moment both for Catholics and these Orthodox Christians in Georgia to see how well the Pope and Patriarch got along, and an important sign.
And Azerbaijan has less than 600 Catholics. How is he encouraging them, and what did you experience there last weekend?
Well, he invited them to go out of the doors of their churches. Imagine just 600 Catholics there. He said that their community was like the original community in the upper room, in the cenacle, with Jesus there inviting the apostles, the disciples, to go out and tell the world his message. That is a very strong message in a place that is more than 95% Muslim. And Pope Francis invited them to go out and to live their faith on the streets. Really a beautiful moment also for them to have the Pope in their midst, such a small community, but such a vibrant one, Brian.
The Catholic News Agency's Alan Holdren in Rome. Thank you, Alan.
Thank you, Brian.
And Pope Francis greets former prisoners of the Auschwitz concentration camp. Addressing Polish-speaking pilgrims today at the Vatican, he said, "Today we celebrate the memory of St. Faustina Kowalska. She reminded the world that God is rich in mercy and that his love is more powerful than death, sin, and every evil." He also met with the Italian Federation dealing with dog sports. They test canine agility and obedience. Like St. Francis, Pope Francis blessed the animals, petting many of them. He gave them and their coaches a special mention during his audience in St. Peter's Square. Up next, celebrating the link between sports and faith, Pope Francis warns against corruption. And Marian expert Michael O'Neill on the Holy Father's planned trip to Fatima, 100 years after Mary's appearance there. Wednesday, October the 5th. Thanks for joining us. I'm Brian Patrick, and Pope Francis implores sports leaders to keep corruption off the playing field. The Holy Father spoke today at the first global conference on faith and sport. He says sports must be protected from manipulations and commercial abuse. His challenge comes during a period of widespread corruption in sports. Members of the International Olympic Committee, soccer executives, and athletes are attending this three-day conference at the Vatican. Pope Francis confirms he will visit Fatima, Portugal on the 100th anniversary of the first apparition of Our Lady to 3 shepherd children. Marian expert Michael O'Neill, creator of the website miraclehunter.com, is with us. What would you say is the central message of the Fatima story?
Absolutely. It's a call to conversion, I think, is what the 3 shepherd children received from the Blessed Virgin Mary starting in 1917, those incredible messages of returning to the faith and a call to conversion for all people.
Certainly, Our Lady of Fatima was huge in the life of St. John Paul II. In fact, he's called the Fatima Pope. Give us a little bit of background on that.
That's right. I think one of the things we can look at specifically is that assassination attempt that happened. Mehmet Ali Agca on May 13th, 1981, shot the Pope. And that, of course, is the feast day of Our Lady of Fatima. And John Paul took the bullet that entered his body and gave it to the shrine in Fatima and placed it in the statue. And he believed in his heart that it was Our Lady of Fatima who actually saved him. And he believed that was the fulfillment of the third secret of Fatima.
And didn't he actually say that the path of the bullet was probably changed miraculously?
Exactly right. He believed it was a true miracle.
So what do you think Fatima can teach us about living in a world where there is suffering, where there is war?
Well, Our Lady talked about suffering and war in her secrets and her messages, and that's something that is happening around the world today as well. So we can never stop talking about conversion and the need for it. So even in today's world, we need to have that as a central focus in our lives.
You're planning a pilgrimage to Fatima. Give us a personal perspective of that.
I'm so excited to hear that Pope Francis himself will be there for the 100th anniversary, the centenary of Fatima, the apparitions happening starting in 1917. And I'll be going on a pilgrimage there. We'll be taking a group, and it's so special to be there for that 100th anniversary. So many people from around the world will be there, including the Pope. And it's a devotion that has touched my life personally, and of course the Rosary is an important part of my life. So celebrating Our Lady of the Rosary at Fatima will be an exceptional event.
Of course, there were ongoing apparitions starting on May 13th, on the 13th of just about each month, all the way through October 13th, when the miracle of the sun occurred. 70,000 people apparently witnessed it. That really makes this apparition something very special to the whole world, doesn't it?
Absolutely. The great sun miracle of Fatima is one of those things that science can't explain. Was it mass hallucination? Was it a great miracle? The debate rages on, but I'm so excited because I've got an opportunity to go to Fatima next week to commemorate that October 13th sun miracle for another television project, so I'm very excited about that.
We're glad to have you. From themiraclehunter.com, Michael O'Neill, we always appreciate you being with us. We'll see you again soon.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you. And EWTN plans exclusive coverage of the 100th anniversary of that first Fatima apparition. You'll find a list of special programming at EWTN.com/Fatima. For the EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Brian Patrick, and tonight we're going to leave you with more images from the Pope's Wednesday audience in St. Peter's Square today. Good night, God bless.